It's Monday and time for the Back to Business podcast, featuring Calgary's industry leaders. Welcome today's show host, Kim Hayden.
They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and today I have professional and award-winning photographer Cedna Todorovic in studio. She's going to be going through, kind of the transference between corporate to entrepreneurial, and what do you do when everybody is a photographer in this new digital world? How do you set yourself apart and follow your passion? But first, our land acknowledgement.
In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Ga'aina, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the E'ahe Nakota Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta.
Ready? Welcome to the show, Chedna. How are you?
Thank you very much. I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited because you've had a really unique journey over the last few years, and I'm looking forward to diving in a little bit around your professional journey. But first of all, I have to say, love the name. You've got a beautiful name. I would have pronounced it Cedna had I not known. It was Chedna.
How people pronounce
All right. All right. So I would love to get a little bit of an insight as to who you are, your educational backgrounds, what you've been doing up to this point, and then let's dive into what you're doing today.
Sure. So I immigrated to Canada at the age of 13, so many, many years ago. I spent 20 years in the corporate space in various industries and roles, starting in strategic sourcing and supply chain management and making my way up to becoming a team lead of project services and project management, dabbling with cost control, and then being a business process improvement specialist in the end. I walked away from that in 2022. To start up my photography business. So I've been a photographer for over a decade, but it was always a part-time hobby and something that I didn't think could materialize into a sustainable full-time business. And now I operate Chedna Portrait Stories, which is a boutique luxury portrait studio here in Calgary.
So I find it fascinating. Okay, so you were part-time, you had a passion within photography, but you had the safety and security of a paycheck.
Yes.
What was the indicators that you felt that now's the time that I can move into this no longer being a side hustle, but the prime hustle?
So unfortunately for me, it was kind of, I call it sort of the divine intervention, if you will. I knew for many years that there was misalignment, just in the sense that I didn't feel fulfilled in my work. I always felt that I wanted to do more. The work kind of lacked purpose, if you will, at a greater dimension, whatever that meant. The contribution was lacking for me. I wanted to do bigger things, and I just wasn't given the space or the freedom or the authority to do them. And so for me, I actually ended up on disability from the last role that I was in. And I spent 3 years healing on disability from what that environment had done to me.
Wow.
And then in that process is when I basically had to give it some thought. What do we do next? And is this something that's actually feasible? So it was a very arduous journey for me. It wasn't a very easy decision. There was a lot of sitting back and contemplating things and trying to figure out if it was the right move and how I could do it. And it was very, very outside of my character or the life that I had lived up to that point. So,
do you feel there's a lot of people in that same spot right now?
I think there is. I think I network quite a lot, and I love meeting new people and learning new things. That's, and I think every time that I speak with people, everybody has something on the side that they're running, whether it's a passion project or a hobby or something that kind of speaks to that. It's that inside voice that's telling you this is what I should be doing. But we all have that fear of the unknown, right? How much risk are we willing to bear? Obviously, when you're in a corporate, you have your pension, you have your benefits, you have your vacation, you have your secure pay. There are a lot of perks or benefits, we could say, to that. But there's also the trade-off then of your time and your freedom and your ability to make your own decisions and kind of craft an intentional life that you want to live. So I think it is definitely a hard one. I think a lot of it comes down to self-belief. Do you believe that you can do it? I think sometimes we jump ahead many steps and we think we don't have all the answers. So we think we'll never get to the answers. That was the case for me, right? I was looking so far down the road that I just could not feasibly really see myself doing all these things that I did not yet know how to do. But I think the key thing for me was you just got to take the first step. You got to take the first step, and then things inevitably will fall into place.
What did people say around you when you were making this jump,
Ooh.
when you finally decided?
That was a hard one. I mean, my family has always been supportive, but I would say that the great majority of friends or my inner circle, I don't think they said it out loud, but you hear things. They thought that I was nuts. They really did, right? They really did think that walking away from a six-figure, well-paid job, and at the age that I'm at in my 40s, right, that it was just very kooky, for lack of a better word. I even had friends that literally told me at the time, as I was just building out my portfolio for this new work, right, because my work over the 12 years was in the wedding space and in the documentary space. The studio portraiture that I wanted to do did not really aesthetically, mimic that. So I had to build a brand new portfolio, right, of people, of children, of men, women. And the introductory prices that I had, starting off, I had people literally telling me to my face, good luck charging those prices and getting people to pay you for them.
Yeah, but you know what? Now walk me through how that has scaled for you, because this is now viable. And then we're going to circle back around. What do we say and how do we apply a business practice principles to entrepreneurship? My guess is you started out with the value equation, the pricing, not based on what you thought you were worth, but what you knew
you had to charge to have a business.
To have a business.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating. Can you walk me down through how did the experience you had migrate over into the company you built?
So I knew that, being a hobbyist for a decade, I did a lot of work for free. It was a glorified hobby, but I had all my equipment and all of my expenses, right? But there was definitely a huge part of self-value or lack of self-value and self-worth that was present there, right? So, it didn't matter whether you were charging $500 for 300 images or $200 or $1,000. You were always going to find people that thought you were too expensive, right?
Yes.
So at the beginning phase, so trying to kind of having that be your gauge, what people are willing to pay, was not a good gauge, right? Yeah. So for me, I really had to sit down and say, if this is my main business and my main source of income right now, I need to charge sustainable professional prices that were also in line with, I have an international accreditation, right? So I worked within certain organizations in the world to get myself to a level where I can be recognized as somebody that provides services at an acceptable standard, professional standard, right? I've won awards internationally, right? So it doesn't mean anything to the end consumer, but it's something I think it's a testament to just saying that I'm dedicated to my craft and that I'm dedicated to providing excellence in my work, right? So I knew that
you're also investing,
and I'm investing in myself.
That's the thing is, I'm hearing there's an investment in.
Yeah, there is. So for me, it was, what are your operating expenses, right? How much do you need to earn just to keep the lights on, right? How much do you realistically need to pay yourself to be able, what's your cost of living, right? What is your cost of goods that go into, your prints, your wall art, all the things that I need to actually produce to give my clients? Because I don't just work in the digital space. I don't just deliver digital images, which is what most people have kind of become accustomed to with photography. I provide tangible printed goods for all of my customers. They're part of my packages, right? So what does that look like? Do you have the time to spend, 40 hours a week just editing images, or do you need to outsource that somewhere? What does that cost? What does that look like? I think the biggest thing is on the surface, a lot of the comments from my friends early on would be, it's kind of viewed as this sort of a gag, right? Like, oh, you're just a photographer, right? You just take pictures. But I say for every 2 hours of picture taking that a photographer does, there's at least 10 hours of behind the scenes work that nobody sees, right? And that's that undervalued piece that people, maybe they're not educated on it, maybe they're not interested in it. But it's not just taking pictures. You're still running a business, right?
Well, and picture's worth 1,000 words. At the end of the day, a visual portrays a story. And I think a good eye, right? Everybody's a photographer nowadays. They got to camera
buy
on
a
their
camera
phone,
and you
right?
go, yeah.
Yeah, you got. I can't. Oh, look, I can do food photography. I can
Yeah.
do everything. And I will have to say, I'm going to give a shout out to my husband Doug. He does do great photos for Instagram, but I can't take a photo for love nor money. No matter what setting I have my camera on, everything looks wrong, and I don't know what it is. I take the worst photos ever. But I'm also moving so fast half the time I'm not looking for the story within the photo, right? Well, and this photo has, and I love the fact that you do the tangibles. I lost 3 years of my kids' lives because they were
From
all
our
on my
phones.
computer, and my computer crashed and I was unable to recover it. And I literally lost 3 years of all those pictures. And I remember having, we used to go and get photos done and we used to print them out. And now nobody does that. I love the fact that you have it tangible.
Yeah. So I think for me, the big thing when I started this business was that I wanted to do things a little bit differently. Like you said, I think there's a lot of people that are in that space, and nothing against them, nothing. But I think it's just, I was striving for something higher, right? I wanted an elevated client experience. I wanted to create a full service studio where I can really have customized and personalized attention for every single person, and where I can walk them through the process and have the time for, to consult with them and design their session with them, and have professional hair and makeup artists that work with me if that is something that they want. And, spend the time and then bring them back and walk them through their portraits and deliver, a personal custom product, right? So that was important to me. But part of that was also that I wanted to create intentional work, which is exactly what you just said. We take pictures all the time. Everybody does with their phones or, with our cameras or whatever. But I don't think many of us pause to really think what we're trying to say with those images, right? So for me, I wanted to tell stories, and that's why I called my business Chedna Portrait Stories, is I wanted to interview people in the process if they're coming for individual portraits or a family story, and be able to tell their story alongside their portrait. So I approached it from a perspective of legacy portraiture, if you will, something that you would pass on to your kids one day when you're gone, right? Something that we can hang up on our walls. That's not just the standard, fall mini in the park or, a Christmas mini. That was something that was a bit more intentional, something that was more artistic, and something that expressed something deeper about that individual than just a snapshot. I think all of us are well versed in creating pretty snapshots, but I wanted that image to say something a bit deeper about the person that's in front of the lens.
I knew a gal years ago, and she such a talented photographer, true, like yourself, a true talented photographer. And it's interesting when you see true photography versus, my husband with his phone. She did these pictures of these two Weimaraners, which were part of the family. But the picture was basically like a black and white, but it had so much depth to it. Every time I looked at this picture, I feel like you could almost pet the dogs.
Yeah, you see something different potentially every time. Right?
Exactly. And I think the art of photography, the art of storytelling can be lost amongst all the quick fixes, the AIs and all these things. And I think a lot of people are looking to take it back a notch, take a step back a little and have those services.
I would hope so, because we can't deny that AI is here, right? I have debates and, conversations with colleagues in the industry on a daily basis. We have very, very vastly different views, right? From yes, it can help us in our business and all the, benefits and efficiencies or certain things that it does for us. But will an AI picture of your child ever really truly represent your child the way that a true photograph will? I don't think that will ever be able to replace that, right? So I think it is about stepping back and about being more mindful about what we're trying to create or what we're trying to say, and having it have some meaning behind it, right? So we're not just getting pictures just to, represent another year in passing. We're getting pictures to actually say something through those pictures.
I find that with my children and my personal experiences, that everything's related back to an experience. I can remember when we did this because this was the setting. Do you find that your clients find that also? Is that you are an experiential service? Like they come to you and they'll not just, they'll look at the picture, but they're going to be able to remember the day that they spent with their family. And, one kid farted, or
Or
you know
did
what I'm
whatever.
saying? Like
Yeah, yeah.
they have those funny stories that they can associate directly to that picture. Do you find that's part of the journey?
I think absolutely it is. I mean, for me, there are a couple of different genres that I photograph, so I think it's slightly different. Like my outdoor documentary family sessions are much more candid documentary in style, and that might be something a family that wants to, just commemorate another year or another baby or a new pet that they've added to their family, right? But the people that come to my studio to do the actual portrait sessions, or that's an experience in itself, right? And I think, most of the clientele or are women that I serve, right? Women sort of in their mid 30s and beyond, up to their 80s. And for them, it's usually, I think years ago, if you think about women, there was a lot of interest. There still is, but I mean, there was boudoir came on scene.
Yeah, the
right?
glamour
The
shots.
glam shots came, right?
Everybody needs a boa.
Yeah. So I don't do boudoir. I think there are people that do it exceptionally well, that do it very tastefully, and they do it, really, really, in an artistic way. And I think there's a lot of people that do it quite poorly, right? But I wanted to create an experience for women that wanted to acknowledge themselves, connect with themselves, or reconnect with themselves. Women that have gone through adversity, women that have overcome illness. Maybe it was cancer, maybe it was something else. Women that are currently going through adversity and challenges, right? Women that have left abusive relationships, empty nesters. Like there's so many diverse stories out there and so many things to tell, that women that come to me because there's something happening in their life that they want to acknowledge, or something that they want to they're going through this thing, and these images or this experience is to sort of commemorate that, if you will, right? So it does become very instrumental in that regard, because when they look back on it in however many years, it's a very definitive moment, and it's a very definitive reason why they want to do it. So it is rare that clients come to me and just say, I want to work with you because I just need some pretty pictures. Very, almost non-existent up to this point, right? So there's always something else. Either they've struggled to see themselves their whole life, or they have had narcissistic parents that never, put up pictures of them as children throughout the home, or ever acknowledged them, or ever, showed them off, or were proud, right? There's all kinds of stories that you hear. And I think, so for them, they're looking for something meaningful, right? Something that, and then if they do have children or families, they're looking to pass these portraits on to them. If they don't, they are doing it for themselves, as a sort of that self-reconnection piece, or to self-express, or to just say, a lot of them have never done anything like that, right? And a lot of them don't feel comfortable taking off their clothes to do a boudoir session. They want, and I think they appreciate that slant that I bring, is they want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
They want to have a conversation with somebody. They want to be seen by somebody. They want to feel valued. They want to feel acknowledged. And then the portraits are just kind of this beautiful bonus to boot on the side, right?
I think it's interesting, especially for women in their 40s and 50s. To me, those are such huge growth years. And yet those are also seem to be a lot where we're seeing women transition from one career to another career, or from corporate to entrepreneur, or even entrepreneur into the corporate space, or going back to school.
Absolutely,
I see a lot of women.
Yeah.
What do you think that when a woman comes in and sits down and has this experiential opportunity with you, and she's documenting this change and shift, what is your goal or your hope that in 10 years, when they take a look at that photo, they feel, they see, they experience?
My hope, first and foremost, is always to just challenge their perspective of themselves, right? Because, I mean, when you talk about so many things that we all come with, there's a lot of things to be unpacked personally for each of us. Obviously, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a counselor. I can't kind of wave my camera and make all of those things go away, right? But I think there is a shift that happens, or at least, that's what I hear from them, in the sense that there's a level of acceptance. I think it's a self-acceptance piece, right? Where they get to see themselves through somebody else's eyes, and all of the things that they were used to, maybe picking on or being self-critical about, suddenly sort of disappears, because they're seeing themselves in this new way that they've never really experienced themselves in before. And it becomes this process of curiosity, I think, more than anything. So if that experience can open that door to curiosity for them to just even ask the questions, right? Like for me, it's a success even if that session opens the door for them to say, I'm going to look inwards a little bit more here, or there's a self-awareness piece that kicks in, or there's something that they ask for the first time of themselves and it leads them to the next step. I think those are beautiful things that kind of, it's like breadcrumbs, right? Like you're leaving little breadcrumbs. So it's not to say that you're going to come in and sit with me and wake up tomorrow and love yourself after 40 years of, maybe not struggling with that idea, right? But it is to say like, wow, I have women that come to their reveal sessions and they cry. They cry. They sit there and they go, I just never imagined, I don't see myself this way. I've never seen myself this way, right? And I think that's the beauty of when I say like, I try to capture something beyond just what we see in the mirror. There's so many layers to people, right? And that's why I ask very personal, intimate questions, right? Because I'm trying to peel back those layers of what drives this person, right? What do they love to do? What's their biggest challenge? What's something that they've learned in life? What's something that they're looking forward to? Like you're trying to look at all these little things. And then in my interaction with them over those hours that we spend together, because we spend a good chunk of time together, like we spend 5 hours together. By the time they get ready and have their hair and makeup, and then, they get in front of me, like I'm in front of them for 2 solid hours, sometimes 3 hours, right? There is something that happens there. It's almost like the guard comes down. Of course, they have to feel that level of comfort with that person. They're not just going to divulge that, I think, to just anybody. But you see this transformation from the beginning where they're very kind of not sure, and you almost see like, what am I doing? What did I think to book this thing? And then you see kind of them unfolding, and by the last set, like it's like a whole different version of themselves. And being able to pick out those nuances of who they are or how I experience them, because at the end of the day, that's what art really is, right? It's an artist's interpretation of what they see. And I think that's the beautiful thing, is like a part of me is reflecting back what I see in them in their physical form, but there's a piece there. And I think that's why typically, the feedback that I get from people that come to me that are interested in my work, when I say what appealed to you about my work, they will say there's a certain soulfulness, or there's a certain something that I can't quite put my finger on that comes through your images. And if I'm successful at doing that, then I consider that, a huge.
And it's fascinating because there's new AI that's coming out that will actually can read somebody's movement before they move by the way that eyes will dilate and everything. And
that's crazy.
It is crazy
stuff.
But to hear that you're spending 2 hours and you're having a conversation during those 2 hours, I'm thinking that even if it was exactly the same portrait, you can get a different look just because of what the eyes are revealing, or a slight facial movement, or do you find that you get, like you were saying, peeling back the layers, but do you find that even if you have the exact same pose, it may have a completely different feel?
So absolutely. And I mean, this goes back to like, I've attended international workshops with photographers from all over the world, and you're working with a set of models, let's say, that, are brought in, and we're all photographing them in the same setting with the same lighting in the same wardrobe, and nobody ever comes out with 2 images that are the same. So I think that's the fascinating part behind it, is that you could have 2 people that are equally technically adept and skilled at their craft, but they will never produce the same image, because what we are creating comes from my work, comes from my personal experience and from who I am as a person and the way that I see the world. And that's unique to me. And I don't believe that can be replicated, right? And I think that's why I always encourage people to kind of follow their intuition and follow their true, it's an overused word, authentic, but it really is so important. Be authentic to yourself, because if I was to sit here and look over my shoulder at every other photographer and what they're doing out there, I would never create my own work. I would just be a poor copycat of trying to replicate them, right?
That's why on racehorses they put blinders on. Like racehorses, it's like just so you're looking at that finish line. You're just looking at that finish. We need to be aware.
We need to be aware, yeah.
Tools and technologies and things that are going on out there.
Absolutely.
But I think we get too far into the comparison space, right? I personally, for me, social media is a tool.
Yeah.
It is not where I spend all my extra time. It's not my engagement space. I'd rather come here to the club for like a networking thing. I'd rather spend time with, somebody who's in an initial evolution of their career and find out where I'd rather spend time with people
Absolutely.
than on, my phone.
Well,
right?
because it takes you down 1,000 rabbit holes, right? that
Yeah,
it's
the
hard to come
scroll
out of.
hole.
Yeah.
I call it the scroll hole. Oh my God, don't fall down the scroll hole. And I think I love the fact that you said you're not spending your time looking what everybody else is doing. You're working on your own art. Where's your family at now? When we look at moms and dads, so you are in your 40s, you must be a millennial, which means you have most likely a boomer or Gen X parent. And they probably said you have to go get an education, you have to do this, and they probably had some distinct impressions or words when you said you were opening a studio. So what were they saying when you opened your studio? And then where's the friends and family network today?
So, that's an interesting question because, like I said, I immigrated here during the 90s from former Yugoslavia in the middle of the Civil War. So I only immigrated here with my mom and my brother. That's the only family that I have. My father, we have a relationship, but we're not close, so he's not really a factor in any of my sort of life or decision making. My mom is wonderful. My mom has always been very supportive of me, so I can't say one bad thing in that regard. To her, if I said I want to, move to Mount Everest tomorrow and, do something up there, she'd say go for it. My friends, I think that's probably been the most interesting journey for me, and I think one of the hardest things, when you decide to go or become an entrepreneur is that they say that a stranger will become your client and your friend sooner than a friend will become your client.
Ooh, that's a good saying.
And I've photographed so part of our community, right, our ethnic community, we know a lot of people and we've been close to a lot of people. And I have, over the years when I was a hobbyist, right, giving my services for free, I have photographed hundreds of friends' families for free, kids' birthdays, baptisms, vacations. And not many of them have come out to support me in this journey. And I think a lot of them have their own ideas or notions about, what this means or what this looks like. But I've met so many new wonderful people and so many new wonderful clients that, yes, while it was hard sort of saying goodbye or building better boundaries, right, with this sort of previous group, or just coming to terms that, you're not there for me. It's hard. It is
hard. I did real estate for a couple decades, and when I talk to new agents, because I still have, once in a while somebody will spark me and they'll come to me and I say, you know what, I'll mentor you. I really like you and I think you have opportunity to make a change in your community. The very first thing I tell them to do is I say, like, okay, we're going to sit down and make the pie. Where can you get all the business, right? We got our communities of interest, our communities of faith, our communities of education, past work, friends and family. Now, when we look at the pie, I want you to take all those pieces and figure out a plan and throw away the friends and family one, because they have watched you go through your punk hairstyle, right, phase. They've watched you, berate yourself over the way you chose to raise your kid, or they've watched you go through all these different things, and they are just waiting for this not to be a phase, right? And that's okay. So I always tell people, turn those people into your advocates, because if they can be your hero without giving you a dime, right, they'll do it. Like, it's amazing how many people, as soon as you take that different route. But I always tell people, if you're waiting for the commission check from your second cousin's Uncle Bob, ain't gonna happen.
But you know what? You make a good point in the sense that I never really expected the financial return to, like, I genuinely never did.
Yeah.
But I think you expect them to at least support you in other ways.
Yeah.
Whether it's coming to your events, right? Or, recommending you to somebody. Or, giving you a shout out on social media. But I haven't even had that piece.
And
right?
We went through a similar situation with a family member here. We don't have a lot of family here. And out of 1,500 real estate transactions, zero was a referral from the family member. So I understand that, and I don't know why. And I hope if you're related to me and I haven't referred business to you, please come talk to me, because I apologize, and we'll rectify
We'll make it
that.
right.
Yeah, we'll make it right. We'll make it right. Being a woman in your 40s, moving from being employed by somebody to having to ensure that you're building a business, not a hobby, what would be your best piece of advice to other people, not just women, but other people?
Work on your dream and do not divulge too much information to those around you.
Interesting. Yeah.
For a certain piece of time, I think, until at least you get it solidified, I think you need to guard your dreams, because it's so easy to be influenced by outside, as I'm starting to cry. It's so easy to be influenced by outside forces. And I think as human beings, we say, you could have 1,000 happy clients and just one disgruntled one, and that one disgruntled one will take a chunk right out of you, and it'll take you a long time to recover, right?
Yep.
I think it's the same with this. You can work for years or months trying to build that self-belief and work really hard to show up for yourself and to learn new things. And it just takes one naysayer, right, to kind of crush it all. So for me, a really important part was to just work on, my ideas, sort of in a, as bad as it's counterintuitive, because we talk about, as humans, we need to connect. But I think there is that initial phase, not all the time, but that initial phase, you need to,
Yeah. You will have to pivot 99 times before one thing sticks.
Yeah.
And this is business.
Yeah.
This
Absolutely,
is business.
yeah.
So statistically, and I'm sure everybody's heard me say this stat, only 9% of businesses out there ever make it past the threshold of 7 figures. Out of all businesses in North America, only 9% make it past that threshold of 7 figures. It does not mean the other 91% were not valid. It means that they pivoted 80 times. They pivoted 40 times. They told everybody, they had one person that they told everything to, and that one last pivot,
it wears you out.
It wears you out.
Right?
That's, what is it? Napoleon Hill, 3 feet from gold. How many of us quit picking away when we're only inches from the gold?
Yeah.
It's just we can't see it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we've got somebody in the back going, I'm thirsty, I'm tired, let's get some.
Pretty much. That's exactly it.
That's exactly it.
I think, so for me, that's the first piece. The second piece is you must be committed to what you want to do, right?
Yep.
You can't have plan A and then a backup plan and a backup plan to the plan, right? So for me, I had to be committed. So it wasn't like I'm going to start this, but then I'm still going to maybe keep, a part-time job in the corporate world in the background. I had to make the hard cutoff and say, I'm committed to this, because I think until you fully commit and show up for yourself, that discipline and that, consistency has to be there, right? You can't really move the needle, right? So you have to have that self-belief that you can do it, and you have to commit and you have to show up for yourself. And then the next biggest thing for me was trying to build a new community. So it was the networking, it was getting out and meeting new people, meeting people that, align with you and your business values and your personal values.
That knew you as the professional.
That understand you,
yes.
Absolutely. That know you from that objective point of view.
Yep.
And people that you just mesh with. I mean, all of us know when we meet somebody, right? Whether we like them or feel for them or want to get to know them more. And then from there, obviously there's many things, but then it's kind of, it's strategically then directing your attention and your work to things that align again with your business and your why. Because I think for me in the first year, I just really told myself, do anything and everything it takes.
And that's actually a good rule for your very first year out. To seize every opportunity. Unless, say yes to everything unless it's illegal or immoral. And that's and there's so many gray areas in all of that. But do that, because you won't know where your boundaries are or where your passions are unless you've tried everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it takes a lot of guts. But entrepreneurs like yourself, like myself, this is the backbone of our economy. We all look at these multi-million-dollar companies, these billion-dollar companies, and think, wow, well, I'm only generating, $500,000 a year. the reality is we all are putting money back into our economy. So a lot of times more directly into our local economy. Where is your studio?
It's actually home based. So I have a separate studio built behind my residence currently. I'm in the Southeast.
Awesome.
And that's my little space. I've got a 13-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. So for the time being, that works well for our life and our schedule and having to drive them and pick them up every day. And so I work around their schedules because I miss so much of their lives working in that corporate wheel. I do have a dream of, moving to a nice, beautiful commercial space one day. So we'll see what that looks like. But for right now, that's where I'm at.
Very cool. And you know what? I worked from home. I did have a nanny to help. So full transparency. But I mean, that was part of the reason why I did real estate is that I was there. I was always there. Right. And that was so important for me as a mother. I mean, I hear a lot of arguments out there. And I know that I've made equal revenue to any man that I've gone up against. But I had my priority, and my priority to this day. My kids are 22, 26, and 34, and I have 2 grandchildren. And that, at the end of the day,
that's the main thing.
That's it.
Well, and that's the hard part, I think, is being women too, is like we have to juggle that additional aspect, right? Like you're worrying about so many different things, you got your children and your time with them and, the scheduling and the household. And now you have this job and you're trying to fit all these things together. And you could argue both ways. There's women that are super ambitious, but they do it at the expense of, maybe certain things, right? On the family.
Everything is at an expense. You just have to know.
You gotta pick what you're willing to kind of pay for it, right?
Yeah. And,
what's the price you're willing to pay?
And I love the fact that you are being part of a legacy. That's what your talent is. Your talent is leaving a legacy that will tell a story 50 years or 100 years from now.
Well, and I do love that. And I think part of that comes from my own personal nostalgia, having come here and leaving all of my family and everybody behind. Photographs are kind of the closest thing I had to those people, right? So having those portraits of my grandparents and our ancestors and people that I loved, they're there on the walls. And it's kind of like this beautiful permanent reminder, almost like they're there with you every day. So I wanted to gift that to our people just because I've noticed that we live in such a disposable, fast-moving digital age that it was like, your kids one day are going to look for pictures of you, and are they going to frame an image off a cell phone, or are they going to even print that image off a cell phone? Is it even printable? Is it even, worthy of anything? So I wanted people to have something that they'd be proud to keep on their walls for generations, for sure.
Thank you for coming and sharing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today on the Back to Business podcast. Be sure to visit calpeteclub.com, CalPeteclub.com, to find out more about upcoming events, networking opportunities, and membership. If you are not already a valued member at the CPC, where we are proudly connecting and supporting Calgary's business leaders.